A little squiggle over the letter N has been around for more than 800 years, and its story involves medieval monks, a very unpredictable king, and tech companies who tried to delete it from the language. And without it, one word goes from Happy New Year to something you definitely don't want to wish your grandma. And today we're following the journey of one tiny little letter that turned into a symbol of culture, identity, and pride. Now, maybe you're asking, why should I care about something that came from the people who colonized our ancestors? Fair question. But this isn't just Spanish anymore. It's part of the journey of who we are now. You'll find it in Quechua, Guaraní, Zapoteco, and other languages. It's a mestizo letter now, a collision of cultures, like so many of the stories of the myths, legends, history, and mysteries that we tell here on the channel. Now, this story is going to get granular, and we're going to go on a few unexpected tangents, but they'll make sense later. I've always been curious about this letter, and once I started researching, I knew I had to share it with you. So if you're a history, language, or culture nerd like me, you're going to like this. Back in the days of the Roman Empire, people wrote in classical Latin, and that's what they used for laws, for books, for speeches, all across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. They didn't have this back then, but they did have double letters, like the double N in annis. Annis, I said. And letter combinations like NI in Hispania for Spain, and also for GN for the word lignum, wood. Centuries later, across the Iberian Peninsula, what's now Spain and Portugal, monks who were copying texts had a problem. Writing every single letter took time, resources, and effort. And parchment made from animal hide was expensive and tough to produce. Full disclosure, I was kind of today years old when I found out that parchment was actually made from the skin of animals. So these scribe monks invented shortcuts. One of these shortcuts was to write a single N with a little wavy line over it. They called it a titulus, to show that another N was right behind it. Meanwhile, the Latin language itself was changing. In what's called vulgar Latin, the casual everyday Latin spoken by regular people in different parts of the Roman Empire, sounds started to change. In the Iberian Peninsula especially, certain double N's, GN's, and NI combinations began to drift toward a new sound, like the ñ in the word canyon. Linguists call it the palatal nasal, a fancy word for the ñ sound in words like niño or piñata, and it became a sound that could change the pronunciation and the meaning of a word. For example, the word for year, annus or annum, became año. The word for Spain, Hispania, became España, and the word for wood, lignum, became leño. At first, this was just a space-saving hack for writing, but over time, people stopped thinking of it as shorthand and started thinking of it as the way to write that sound. Well, for those who could read and write, remember that less than 5% of the people in the Roman Empire could actually read or write. But by the 1100s, this little N with a squiggle over it was appearing in all kinds of writing. Today we call that little wavy line a virgulilla. I always called it a tilde growing up, but alas, I have been corrected. Then in the 1200s, King Alfonso X of Castilla, known as Alfonso el Sabio, Alfonso the Wise, gave it royal recognition. He issued the first written rules for the Castilian language, and this became part of it. Now, while we're implying Spain, let's be clear, it wasn't Spain yet. King Alfonso ruled Castilla, one of the independent kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula, along with León, Navarra, Portugal, Aragon, and others. And yes, that's where Castellano, Castilian Spanish, gets its name. The language we now know today was born in Castilla, Castile, in English, not in some unified Spain. That wouldn't happen until 1469, when Queen Isabel I married King Fernando II of Aragon. Yes, the Ferdinand and Isabella we know from our stories in school, from the story of Christopher Columbus. Then just a couple of decades later, in 1492, something major happened in the Spanish language. A scholar named Antonio de Nebrija published the very first grammar of Castellano, the very first grammar guide of any major European language. Quite a year, 1492, wasn't it? And guess what? He made sure this guy was in it. So as Spain was getting ready to send Columbus across the ocean blue, if you know, you know, this guy had already made it into the official grammar books. It wasn't just the scribble of a scribe anymore. It was now part of the language. So in terms of this letter, it was almost official. By the early 1700s, now Spain's Real Academia Española, the Royal Academy of Language, was working to make Spanish spelling consistent across the empire. The academy was founded in 1713, during the reign of King Philip V. Now, King Philip was not your standard-issue monarch. He was born in France, and he was the grandson of iconic King Louis XIV. But Philip had issues. Historians today believe he likely suffered from some form of bipolar or manic depressive illness. He battled crippling depression, often refused to change clothes, and sometimes wouldn't get out of bed for days or weeks. He even abdicated his throne to his son, but then he had to take the job back when his son died just a few months into the job. But while he was unraveling personally, he was overseeing one of the most ambitious projects in the history of Spain, structuring the most meticulous spelling reform Spain had ever seen, and that's where the Academy comes in. And in the Academy's first spelling guide in 1741, this was officially locked into place, right after N in the alphabet and with its very own name, ñ. Before that, people had never really agreed on what to call it. And in 1803, when the Royal Academy released a new edition of its Diccionario de la Lengua Castellana, the letter ñ was officially included, not just as a pronunciation guide, but as its own full-fledged letter in the dictionary. Unusually, though, other languages that descended from Latin didn't do the same thing. Italian kept the GN combination for the ñ sound, like in lasagna or in gnocchi. French did the same thing with champagne or montagne. Portuguese went with the NH combination, like in Ronaldinho. Spanish, though, just one letter, ñ, y listo. The ñ spread across Spain and anywhere Spain left its mark. From the Americas and deep into the Pacific, it tagged along with the language. Fun fact, in Morse code, ñ is dash dash dot dash dash. So now let's jump to the 1980s. Picture a computer lab in Madrid, Spain. Big beige plastic keyboards, blinking green on black monitors, but no ñ anywhere. Hostia, no puede ser. When Spain joined the European Economic Community in 1986, a regulation required computer products to support the full Spanish alphabet. But some manufacturers thought that they could just dump the ñ to save costs, mostly companies from Japan and the US. Spanish users were revolted at the idea. Newspapers blasted it as an attack on the language. In other words, the ñ almost got deleted from history, literally, just to save a few cents on the keyboards. Under pressure, though, companies kept the ñ in Spanish computers and on Spanish keyboards, and it's still here today. This is mine, and you better believe I cleaned it for using it in this video because it was crusty from use. The ñ isn't just a sound on paper. Over time, it's become a cultural symbol. In the US, Latinos started using the phrase Generation ñ in the 90s to show pride in their roots. Weather reports throw it into the spotlight with stories about El Niño and La Niña. And when keyboards or newspapers get it wrong, Spanish speakers rally to defend it. In 2013, Puerto Rican linguist Aida Verne wrote a newspaper column saying the Royal Academy was going to drop the ñ and go back to the use of the double N as it had before. People who read the article took it seriously. It spread so fast, the Academy had to release a statement saying, basically, relax, we are not going to touch the ñ. Only later did people notice the date of the article, April 1st. They got pranked. April Fools. But to be fair, though, in Latin America, the real Fool's Day isn't April 1st. It's December 28th, El Día de los Santos Inocentes. So yes, people will fall for a fake story about the ñ because it matters that much. Imagine if the keyboard makers had won. España turns to Espana. Niño becomes nino. Mañana becomes manana. It is not the same. No es lo mismo. Purists warn that without the ñ, the language is going to look like it went through Google Translate, or worse, a bad AI. And as somebody who works as a translator and a voice actor in my day job, I have seen some AI disasters. But it's a slippery slope. If you drop the ñ, what's next? The upside-down question mark or the exclamation points? Pretty soon, Spanish won't feel like Spanish at all. The ñ is on passports, IDs, street signs, official seals. It shows up in pop culture, el niño, la niña, CNN en Español's logo. And Spanish last names can change meaning without it. Peña, which means rocky hill, becomes pena, which is pity or embarrassment. Don't do that to Michael Peña or your family's last name. Take it away and you're not just changing spelling. You're rewriting history, names, and part of a culture. So yes, the ñ might just be a little squiggle, but remove it, and everything changes. Feliz Año Nuevo makes your grandma smile. Feliz the other one gets you kicked out of the family group chat. Drop your favorite ñ word in the comments, and share this with someone who's a language or culture or history nerd. I'm all three. And you'll be seeing a lot more of the ñ right here on the Mysteries of Latin America. Our graphic design wizard, Alan, who did not wish to appear on camera, came up with a design called the Ancient ñ, a mashup of the ancient and the modern, kind of like us. Check out the store on the channel to grab one for yourself and help support the channel. We make a small commission on every sale, and all of that helps to keep the lights on. I am not kidding. So friend, as always, gracias for visiting. And until next time, adios.